So it's, yeah, I understand completely. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. My name is Marcia, and I am your president, and Robert is our vice president.
Hello, everyone.
I'd really like to extend a warm welcome and such a great appreciation to these lovely people who have decided to come and help us become more educated, and so we can make a knowledgeable decision this November. Our CSO officer is not here yet. If she does come, we're going to slide her to the back and we're going to get started. So Robert has timers. Yay. So since we have a lot of questions and we're only allowed in the building until 8:15, we're going to try to keep you guys on task. It's also,
30 seconds, 15 seconds, 5 seconds.
All right, would that work? Okay, we're going to do this alphabetically. So we're going to start with Sandy B, and you stand up and you're going to we're going to do the introductions now, and then we'll just start rotating down as we start. And, all right, so take it away, Sandy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Marcia, and everyone else. My name is Sandy Bashaw, and I am obviously running for Lucas County Commissioner. A little bit about me is that I'm a mother, I am a wife. I have 4 boys, one a stepchild, and then 2 other boys that are my spiritual sons, I call them. They came from a broken home recently. We took them in this last year, and all odds were against them, and now they're at the university, and I'm so proud of them. So a total of 6 boys. So I only know boys in my life is what I'm getting at. And I'm a wife of a mechanic. I'm a nurse by profession and a chaplain, and working right now and doing outreach and transitioning to another position soon next week, which I'm excited about, working more in the hospital field, in the actual buildings, not so much going into the homes like I did before. What I did at this time is work with the underprivileged, the Medicaid population in their homes, trying to get the care that they need for their diabetes or whatever it is that was happening in their lives. But most of the time I work with them trying to get food, trying to get mental health services, that sort of thing. And I also was a previous business owner when I lived out in Tennessee. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Thank you. Here.
I'm Gary Byers. As some of you may recognize me, for 24 years I was the judge in the Maumee Court District. Before that, I started as a Lucas County prosecutor trying serious felony cases, so the murders, the burglaries, the rapes. I did that for 7 years. Then I became elections director back in the day when we used to get returns out before 11 o'clock. Does anyone remember those days? And then we had the average age of 105 of our poll workers back then. No, I'm just kidding. That's it just seemed like it, but after that, after I was director of elections for a couple years, I became head of the Toledo office for State Attorney General Lee Fisher. I headed that office, and then in 1993 I was elected judge, and I served 24 years as judge of the Maumee Court. Why is that relevant? 70% of the county budget deals with some form of expenditure in the criminal justice system, whether it's the jail, whether it's the sheriff's department, whether it's the common police court, whether it's incarceration. So having an understanding of the criminal justice system is something that's pretty important, and I hope to bring that to the table. The fact that if you're negotiating with the judges of common pleas court, I know them all very well. It's something that I hope to bring to the discussion, an understanding so that when you're spending tax dollars, knowing how to spend them most efficiently and most effectively is what I'm bringing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's always good.
Sandy?
Good evening. I'm Sandy Spang, independent candidate for county commissioner, endorsed by Toledo Fire, Police, Board of Realtors, and Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor to be here with the Burroughs Association. You know, they meet the same night, the Burroughs Association, because I know firsthand how you have pushed back against blight and disinvestment in this neighborhood. So I want to talk about why this election matters. It matters because in Ohio, counties have broad responsibilities.
And as a small business owner and a property manager, I have the skills and experience to serve you well. In 5 years on Toledo City Council, I've shown light on inefficiency and had a strong record of fiscal responsibility. But this election matters because this is our moment. You can feel the momentum. It's a chance to restore the lost jobs and population in Lucas County. But there are challenges. Businesses like our location, but our workforce isn't ready. Lake Erie must be moved from impairment to health. And regional cooperation is not optional. We need leaders who can build trust amongst communities. So what Lucas County needs now is a commissioner who understands our community, is fiscally responsible, and brings a fresh perspective and balance to county government. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Wow. I'm very excited. All right, so we submitted these 5 questions to the candidates yesterday. So sorry. So you haven't had a lot of time to prepare, but we're going to start. That was our Gary. As a commissioner, is there anything you can see yourself specifically doing for the Burroughs neighborhood?
Be 1 minute on the responses.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Obviously, as Sandy's alluded to, workforce development is key. I believe in 3 things that I've been talking about on this campaign. One is regionalism. I agree. As the future is together, working together as individual entities or neighborhoods or small governments, whether it's Maumee, it's not Maumee versus Oregon or Sylvania versus Toledo. We need to work as a region because we're not competing against each other, we're competing on a world stage. So whether it's water, whether it's Lake Erie, all of these things are key, and regionalism is very important. As far as the neighborhoods, workforce development. Jobs are developing right now, but we need to train folks to take the jobs that we have. We have a lot of construction jobs that are going on in Lucas County. All you have to do is drive around. But having trained workers and having our kids trained to do that is very important.
Thank you.
We could sit up. You can ask them.
You guys want to make it a minute and a half?
Yeah, can we? Yeah, it seems for 2 minutes. I mean, I'm okay if you guys are.
Yeah, we just might not be able to ask any questions here, but I just feel like you were just getting going.
Yeah, you need to have enough. I'll waive my rest of my time.
Are you sure?
Let's finish this question in a minute, and then if you want to lengthen it.
Yeah, let's.
Sure.
Because you guys have so much energy, and I just love this. There's so much information. Okay.
And then, real quick, if the audience has questions, there will be time for questions. We're going to try to save as much as we can, but make sure to write your question beforehand and ask it very concisely at the end of your answers.
Yeah, and if you have multiple questions, pick one, because we're only going to be able to do a couple questions, because the school will get too upset if we're here too long. Okay. So, yep, same thing.
So you know, the county already does a lot in your neighborhood, and you may not be aware of it. A lot of times people think that things are happening through the city, and it's actually through the county. Did you know animal control, that's the county? If you call the dog warden, that's the county. If you need rat control, it goes to the county health department. There are 130 pages in the Ohio Revised Code of Responsibilities of Commissioners. I brought along the Ohio County Commissioners Handbook. I think you might find that interesting to take a look at the broad range of things that our county commissioners do. You may not know about it because perhaps there's not as much engagement from the county commissioners. You know, as a city council member, I'm used to it. Most of you have my phone number in your program in your cell phone. I think we need to know more about what the county commissioners do and be able to understand how we can communicate with them better when things don't go the way that we want them to.
Thank you. Sandy?
And I just want to clarify, is the question, as commissioners, anything you can see yourself specifically doing for the boroughs?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes. I mean, I think, I'm going to bring up the jail, and I know that's another question that's coming up. But if we save the taxpayer that burden of having a jail,
I think we need to focus on the issues that are affecting our communities. Like they said, workforce. I totally agree, absolutely. And one of the things that are affecting the workforce is our drug and opiate heroin epidemic, trafficking epidemic. Toledo was considered one of the most miserable cities in the nation, a Gallup poll that came out recently. It was second in the nation, and we had the top 5 cities nationwide. That's terrible, absolutely terrible. So when I look at neighborhoods like Burroughs or even in Point Place or different areas, Edgewater, I consider that we need to be looking at how we can come in as a community and clean these places up. One of the things that I want to see in the schools is the emphasis in the schools, an after-school program like we used to back in the day. They were everywhere. And we're not saying reinventing the wheel. We can work with the YMCA, we work with the churches, but we need to be looking at our schools and looking at these as the issues that are affecting our communities and not focusing on a jail.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, I got drawn into the seconds counting.
Okay, Sandy Spang, we're gonna start with you
How long?
on this, and you have 2 minutes, is that what we said? 2 minutes.
Okay.
We'll wait for Robert to get it ready.
Scam.
Oh, we got a chair now, uh-oh.
Just gotta move the camera.
Yeah, so you guys, people watching, don't, yeah, stare at you. Not live, but I will get it up probably within a day.
All right, excellent.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, Sandy, how do you feel about the direction of the new jail?
I'm glad the question is the direction, because I don't think the question is no jail or absolutely yes jail. I think the question is, what's the process been looking like? I thought after the controversy about the Angola site that we'd see a higher level of community engagement. When the community makes an investment this large and this important, I think there needs to be more communication with the citizens, especially those who are going to be directly affected in their neighborhood. And that really hasn't happened. So I think we need to take a step back. If we're going to build the right jail, in the right place, at the right price, that will serve us now and for generations to come, we need to do it as a community. The one piece that I feel strongly we can move forward with quickly is the Solution Center. It's a place where our police officers can take people with mental illness and substance abuse issues, not to the jail to be charged, but to the Solution Center where they can be put into some sort of a track for treatment. We used to have opportunities like that. Now the only 2 choices are the hospital or the jail. That's the smallest part of the proposed jail. That's about an $18 million part of the $180 million proposed project. And you know, if we start with that, we'll be able to measure then what the impact is on the number of beds that we need. Some estimates say that up to half the people incarcerated in our country today are incarcerated because they have mental illness, and there's nowhere else to take them. So we do need a new jail. Our current jail is inefficient, and it's not effective. We've made great strides with the MacArthur Grant for Justice. We've lowered recidivism, working with our judges. We've increased the number of folks who show up for their court dates. But now we need to take that next step, and we need to do it together as a community. So let's open this conversation up and include everybody.
Sandy?
Oh, okay. So I am vehemently opposed to a new jail. I've actually toured the jail, and that's what actually got me involved in getting into this jail and in this process and why I'm running for Lucas County Commissioner. It was never, no offense, no intent on trying to, a Sandy versus a Sandy. That was never the intent, ever. The Angola jail didn't pass there, and I'll be honest, I mean, and that's a stupid thing to say. I mean, obviously I'm here, I want to be honest with everybody, but that wasn't it wasn't in my neighborhood. It wasn't in my neighborhood. So I wasn't as involved with it. It's funny how things change when they try to put it in your neighborhood. And then when I went to the meeting, it was like, no, this is not right. I called the Republican Party, the chairman at the time, and I said, look, I'm in. Because they had come to me and they wanted me to run for auditor. I was not interested in auditor. I wanted to do something that I felt that I could be effective in or try to make a change, a positive change. A jail is going to be a burden for the taxpayer, period. My name went on that initiative to say, and knocked on doors and told people, and with all due respect, when she's saying we need more community involvement, when you have 10,500 people sign a petition that says we don't want a jail, or we want to vote on the jail. Let us vote on the jail. Just like we're doing with the issue 15, that we're voting over that. We need to do the same thing with this. So now the Board of Elections said no, and we have it at the Supreme Court. My name is on that lawsuit because I took a stand. I need you to understand, we don't need a jail. I've toured it. I'm not saying that it doesn't need renovating. Absolutely. And yes, we want safety. We want all those measures, but it makes no sense when we have tunnels and safety and transportation that's going to cost, and a levy that's going to continue to cost our children more debt. These are the things that we need to clean up in our community. This overabundance of wanting to tax everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was a judge for 24 years. Trust me, we need a jail. Not only because it's a dump and it's putting guards at risk and defendants at risk, and this isn't a prison, this is a jail. This isn't our kids get picked up for drunk driving, this is where they go. And I don't know about you, happily my kids haven't been picked up, but kids do stupid stuff, and this is the kind of place where they go. Part of the problem is it's built on multiple levels, and it is incredibly inefficient. We're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every year because of the inefficiency. The ratio, I understand, between security guards and prisoners is 1 to 1.3. That number should be 1 to 35. We are wasting taxpayers' dollars. Whether you think it is a nice place or not a nice place, we got to quit wasting that money. And hopefully my background can bring that to an understanding so that we're making the best decisions. I agree with Sandy. I actually participated as a judge in the MacArthur Foundation. I represent the suburban courts in this, and our purpose was to try to reduce minority populations in custody in Lucas County, Ohio. One thing that we did do that was very effective was our pretrial release program. We had nonviolent offenders, and they were likely to return to court, and we had a tool that we utilized to evaluate whether someone's likely to return to court. Why let them out of jail 2 weeks later when they've lost their work and they're out of custody, their family's affected? We decided if you're going to release them now. We need detention facilities. Our opiate epidemic. I'm the only one here that's trying to keep heroin addicts alive. And it's tough. Heroin addicts, they'll tell you exactly what you need. You gotta do things, and the treatment facility that we're going to have there, as far as, and also the mental health facility, I absolutely agree that people that have mental health problems shouldn't be in jail. They should be getting treatment. My turn.
All right, we're going to start now with Sandy. Will you be helping in any way with their Lake Erie issues?
Well, that one pretty much is very easy for me, absolutely. I mean, we want clean water. They had a scare several years ago, and we want the people that we put in those facilities to take care of the water, to test it, to do what they need to do, to find out what's causing these issues. Absolutely. I mean, I'm on board with doing what we need to do to get our water safe and clean. I mean, there's no question. As a nurse, that's very important for me. I mean, I have patients. We want to take care of them. We want to make sure that there's clean water in our environment. I've looked at certain disease processes. I mean, they talk about autism, it's on the rise, it's this and that. I mean, what's going in our water? So those issues do concern me as a nurse, and absolutely I want that. But I want to work and make sure that our water is clean. I don't really have much more to say about that because yes, absolutely. I want clean water. There's no question. And whatever we need to do to make sure that that happens, absolutely. But I want to address what Mr. Byers said in terms of he's the only one. Well, as a nurse, and an EMT, first responder, I've seen people die. We've had to deal with that issue for so long. As a nurse, I mean, we see it, I'm out there. I haven't been a first responder for a little bit, about a year, over a year, less than a year. So yes, to me, the opiate epidemic is huge. Another jail is not going to fix that. And when they talk about the MacArthur bill, you've got to understand, look at the numbers. If they're telling you that the recidivity rate is going down, then why do we need a new jail? Why do we need a bigger jail? And why do we need to move it out of one location to another? It doesn't make sense. I've toured that jail. We do not need a new jail. Do we need to fix those problems? Absolutely.
Thank you. Here. So, I guess, I should say also, I mean, would you be helping? But I guess the unspoken question is also how.
Well, again, there's a limited role that the county has in Lake Erie. Primarily it's federal and primarily it's state. The problem is, we've been farmers here. I mean, the runoff is huge as far as the nitrates that are overflowing. We have been lobbying the state in order to have the lake declared impaired. Finally, they've grudgingly gone along with that. We need to have reasonable regulation of nitrates. You know, that's how we had July was so dry, and all of a sudden the algae bloom was not as bad as they thought. That's because there was not runoff that was going into the lake. We need to work with reasonable regulations. If we can reduce that runoff by working with farmers, I think that we can affect in a positive manner. But we need to work as a community. Again, regionalization. Working, whether it's on the drinking water, the water plan, we need to work as a region. Whether it's job development, we need to work as a region. We can't do it alone anymore. Working on the lake, we need to get cooperation of all of the entities, and whatever part that you have to contribute, whether it's the city or whether it's the county, we need to work together. Also, going back to the jail. Jail's not the only issue in this election. We're wasting money there, and that alone is justification to get rid of this jail because of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're wasting every year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You might have to have a follow-up question on the jail, I think. Okay, thanks.
So the health of Lake Erie is important to us from a health standpoint. It's important because it's an economic driver. Because the amount of money that comes into our community through tourism, go to Point Place, and you'll understand the importance of Lake Erie in a very real way. But we're the recipients of that runoff. It's coming to us from not just Ohio agriculture, but it comes from Indiana, comes from Michigan, comes from Canada. So how do we deal with this enormous international problem that we are really more the recipient of than the creator? And it is through partnerships. It's through joining in coalitions. It's through always making sure that our interests are heard at the state and the federal level. In Ohio, 1 in 7 jobs is still agricultural. That means that agricultural interests are very strong. And so far, it's been voluntary limits on the amount of nitrates and runoff that we experience coming towards us. Voluntary limits haven't been working to reduce the algal blooms. We need to work at the state, the federal, and the international level. We need to be able to build those partnerships to be able to make a difference. So that's a strength that I have. I like to work in relationship with other people. And I will always take our message to Columbus, to Washington, any opportunity that I can to talk about the importance of the health of Lake Erie. And we're going to see a change in that. Remember the last time we had to fight for the health of Lake Erie? I was just a kid. We'll do it again.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Byers. So this is just kind of a, piggyback on that last question. What are your thoughts on the regional water deal?
Again, my view is a regional view of the future. You gotta work together. You gotta find ways. I had a mediation program when I was a judge that people would try to solve their own problems. We had volunteer lawyers who would come and try to work this out. And 90% of our small claims cases worked out. And I usually found that if everyone walked away from the table a little unhappy, then it's probably a pretty reasonable settlement. And I think water is going to be that way too. There are multiple ways we can go with this. The current situation that the mayor has put forward, that people will be voting on, I think we need an independent water commission to set rates. I think the communities need to be involved, because going out to some aquifer in western Ohio doesn't seem like a long-term solution to me. We have a resource, we need to find a way to work with it. Issues as far as lead piping in the city of Toledo, we need to remediate that. And this is a part of the agreement that should be included, the remediation of that, having an alternate source. If we do have a problem where the toxic levels go up, we got to have another source that we can tap into, so that we don't have the scare that we had when Mayor Collins was mayor and we had to go without water for quite a while. Those are the types of things. Everyone's got to give up something. I think the big thing that would bring in the suburban communities, if you have an independent commission that's setting the rates. Having city council in Toledo able to veto that seems a little uncertain to a lot of folks. And I think if you had an impartial, independent group commission that was setting rates, I think that might be the bit that would get it over, although that's not part of the current deal right now.
Thank you.
You don't have to clap.
It's so fun. Okay.
I strongly advocated for the original plan, TAWA, Toledo Area Water Authority. I thought it was the best deal for Toledo. I thought it was the best deal for the most vulnerable Toledoans, because it had a 1% set aside for low-income ratepayers, and because it had a way forward for us to replace our lead pipes. So I was a strong advocate for the Toledo Area Water Authority. The plan that's currently before us it's contract-based, and it's all going to depend if the mayor can give contracts to our community partners that they'll accept. City Council does retain the final word because they have to. It's because we have $500 million in debt. The city of Toledo, not Maumee, not Sylvania, not Perrysburg, but the city of Toledo has $500 million worth of debt for the improvements to Collins Park that we're responsible for. And we would have to have, it would be council's responsibility to make sure that those bonds are covered. So legally, they're going to have to retain that veto power for the city of Toledo. And I understand why our community partners are not as happy with that plan. But I want to say that even now, whatever plan goes forward, and I do believe it has to be regional, there are things that could happen right now that would benefit city of Toledo ratepayers. Because one of the things that TAWA promised was operational change, adhering to industry best standards. My research uncovered the fact that 71% of Toledoans do not use the water minimum that they pay for. And I've been asking for 5 years for us to go to monthly billing, an industry standard since 2008 that would make it easier for people to plan ahead for their water and sewer bills that come only quarterly and can be $200, $300. We need those changes now.
I agree. I'm not supposed to, but I do.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Sandy and Mr. Byers, I tend to kind of agree with that, and it looks like on November you get to decide on issue 15. I mean, it looks like it's up to everybody to decide on that, what they're going to do, but I understand the surrounding areas apprehensive of having the city council having to make that decision. and I agree with what you're saying. It's kind of weird that I'm agreeing with both of you. It is, I mean, but I agree that we should have a separate entity kind of looking over that and looking at how those rates are going to be instituted, because again, for me, it's what's it going to cost me? I like the monthly billing that you're talking about. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, there's really not much more I can say other than it is going to be up for the voter come November on issue 15. I agree that we need to look at how they're going to vote. I don't know if I agree. Is it two of the Toledo, two council in Toledo? Is that what they're looking at? Is that what I've heard? That it's going to be two council people, the Toledo representing.
There's going to be commission,
Right.
but they'll have representation on that, but the ultimate determination, a veto power, is with city council.
So if I could just add in and not take
Yeah,
over
it's
for
not
time. The members of the water authority that is proposed that you're going to be voting on, it would be no elected officials. It would be the public utilities director from each of the communities. So theoretically, people who specialize in the delivery of these public utilities to citizens. So those would be the professionals who would be sitting on that board. If the TAWA plan had gone forward, it would have been paid board members who have professional experience in the water industry. So either way, it won't be elected officials sitting on that board. So I hope that doesn't take away from
Just a clarification, were you asking 2 members from Toledo and then everybody else gets 1?
Right, that's how,
Is that still?
that was from the original, correct?
So actually, the
Actually,
original,
some share.
yeah, good point. Like Maumee had 1/3 of the vote. They had 3 communities shared 1 person. So out of 7, Toledo had 2, Lucas County had 1, and all the other communities, including Fulton County, Monroe County, they shared. The new plan, every community gets 1 representative, and that is their public utilities director.
And then
Or
city
some
council
equivalent
gets to
of-
override, should that.
Well, legally, that, because of the debt, that has to remain an option.
And that's why I feel like with Byers, what you're saying makes sense to me, to have a neutral party. But something obviously has to get done, and bottom line, it comes down to what's it gonna cost me? What am I gonna have to pay for that? So this is a very controversial topic in terms of what's it gonna cost the taxpayer. Again, another issue that we're dealing with the taxpayer and the burden of that, because the jail is, and I keep going back to that because I'm saying that is going to be a burden for the taxpayer. We really need to look at that issue, and hopefully you'll get to vote on that come November.
Thank you. All right, Sandy Spang, you're gonna start with this. I just wanna preface this question with, we're a small group, but we're mighty. I know you know that you've worked with us quite a bit, and really appreciate that. But so this question is how will you stay in contact with your constituents?
We have been through some things together, Burroughs Association, the junkyard, some businesses that brought less than favorable things to your community. And it's been all of you. You know, I jokingly say, here you are, you could be home watching Jeopardy. You are the heroes. I say this at every block watch, every association meeting. I say, you are the people on the front lines. You're the people holding the city together with chewing gum and duct tape, because you're fighting back. You're pushing back against the negative things that are happening to your neighborhood, and you're accentuating the positive things that happen. And I hope you know that with me, you know what you'll get. You know that when you've asked me to come and come prepared about a topic, I've come. I've always been as transparent as I possibly could with you. And I haven't told you what to think, but I've tried to bring you information about how things work. That's not going to change. We'll have a little bit different relationship, but what I hope I can do is show you all the ways that the county is touching your lives that you may not be noticing. And I'm hoping that when I come to visit the association, I can bring you information that will be valuable to you about county services and county programs, things you may not be hearing that much about. Because that's one of the things, you know, people keep saying, Sandy, why do you want to leave city council? Because in Ohio is kind of a county-centric state. Do you know that a lot of the people who go to Columbus were former township trustees and county commissioners and don't even have an urban center in their county? Look at Lucas County. We have a lot of cities. We have Oregon, Maumee, Toledo, Waterville. So it's important that your county's working with your city in order to maximize what we can do for our community. Thanks.
So the question is, how will you stay in contact with your constituents? For me, Sandy's talked about transparency. I do believe that we need that, especially right now more than ever in local government. For me, communicating with me, my phone is always available. I do that right now with all my patients. I don't care. I mean, my number in the pastoral world and in the nursing world, I'm available anytime. But more than that, right now what we're seeing with our commissioners, there really is very little transparency. There is a budget that's posted, but it's so difficult to find. The things that are being spent, how are they really being spent, the bids that are being put in, who's really making the bids, and how do we get all that information. And trust me, we've been looking, our team has been looking, the jail group has been looking, we've been trying to get answers. Transparency is very important. And as I get into this position, my goal is to be committed to the people. I'm not part of a political machine or a democratic machine. I'm just a mother, a wife, a nurse, a chaplain, somebody who sees the issues that are affecting our neighborhoods. And for me, it really comes down to money. Where is the money going? One of the things that we were finding very difficult is when we go to these public meetings, they're during the day. Well, I work, I'm a nurse. I work out in the field. We need to have these meetings where they can come, people after work can come to these meetings, make them available for the general public. And then when we go, be able to ask questions, voice your concerns. Well, we're not seeing that. Transparency to me is being able to be fiscally responsible where the money is going, being able to see it, being able to get contact with your officials, and being able to go to these meetings and be able to voice your opinion and your concerns, and then be given the ability to make a difference. Because like they were saying, it's going to take the community. It takes community involvement, and I totally believe that. But it only happens if they're willing to listen to what you have to say, Martha, or what I have to say. And I don't see that right now.
I agree. One thing I did as a judge years ago, because most people come to municipal court, that was truly the people's court. They got jobs and you got a traffic ticket and you've been speeding down, Airport Highway or whatever, and you get a ticket and you can come into court. You don't want to be there. What we started doing was having a traffic court at 5:30 or 5 o'clock, so people don't also have to miss a day's work. I think county government should do that too. I think we should reschedule the meetings so that at least one meeting a month should be after hours, so people don't have to miss a day's work to come voice their opinion. So I think that's a good idea, and if I'm elected, I'm going to push for it. I'd be one of 3 votes, but I think I can lobby reasonably effective. But this sort of brings up another issue that I've been concerned about for a while. In this country, there's a lot of anger. Have you noticed that? People are having difficulty talking about the issues because they're so divisive. What we've forgotten as a country is how to disagree with civility. And I credit both of my opponents. I mean, we talk to each other, and we may disagree on some particulars, but we don't dislike each other. And we need to remember as a country and a community how to communicate. And it's okay that we disagree about some things. It's even the most strident person that is 100% against every view that I believe. If you take that person and set them down, I bet you there's 90% of what we do agree on about this country. And it's that 10% that divides us. And we need to, as a community, I think the legal profession, we disagree with civility all the time. That's part of the way we do business. And communicating that so that our community also does it is effective. And meetings like this, where we can disagree or agree and communicate with civility, is something we need to do more of. Thanks.
Wow. All right. We do have time. So does anyone have a question I'd really like to ask? Yes, Barry. Hold that thought. So we're gonna start with, I just wanna make sure we're still on board on the right. So Sandy, I think Sandy Byers, you'll be the first one to answer this question.
We'll see what the question
Is that, well, does he want to, are you related to all of us?
Sure,
or-
probably only one can probably be able to answer. There's a talk about moving to jail over where the impound lot is.
Sorry.
What happened
I don't.
This seems like the perfect place.
It's got to be flat enough that you can have it on one level, is the only thing, okay? And I think there are places downtown that you could move it. I think there's, up on Alexis Road, it would work too. The current commissioners have chosen that location. It's going to be up to the community whether to fund it or not. But again, as long as it's flat, then you can do some of the efficiencies that you don't have now. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, the city owns the impound lot and did not want to sell. So that didn't go anywhere.
That's probably the furthest from any residential area.
A lot of people, see, that's where the community conversation needs to be stronger. In 2004, there was a study done by Pogemeyer, the engineering firm that did the studies for the current site. And at that time, they showed the health department site as being a possibility for a new jail. The problem is that they were showing a stacked jail, multiple floors, and the current commissioners are favoring the more modern design of a single floor. You know, if you've ever been in an ICU unit, you know how they design them, right? I've been in a lot of them for a lot of times, and I'm sure you have too, Sandy. But you know, they have a central area where you can see everything that's happening around you. That's a really efficient way to operate a jail. So what they're talking about now are sort of pods that they're going to be doing where there would be that kind of visibility. Actually, they're going to be somewhat two-story because there's kind of like dorms. There'll be some stairs going up to a loft, but they'll be mostly first floor and lots of visibility. So that does take more space. If that's the kind of jail that we're going to build, then we're going to need more one-story space to be able to do that. But I think, again, it goes back to this issue of engaging the community, having this larger conversation, not being told where the jail is going to be, but really talking about what our options are and where we can most effectively put this jail and addressing the concerns. You know, there are some serious concerns of people out in the North Toledo area. 70 to 100 people a day are released from the jail. And they want to know what that's going to look like. And the answer they've been given is, we'll send an extra tartar route out there. I think they need deeper answers than that.
Yeah,
so I think it's all about community engagement.
I agree.
So I do see that, I agree with what you're saying. The community engagement should have been done a long time ago. Now I'm a transplant from Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised in Los Angeles, California, moved to Nashville, lived there close to 20 years. Well, I can tell you that they had the same thing happen. They wanted a jail, they pushed for a jail, and the people said no. They listened to the people. Imagine that. They said no. And what they did is, instead of bringing in a new revitalized, great, I was just talking about the pods and this and that, they're just going to add to it. They're just going to add to it. Our current jail was built so that you can build up. We've got tunnels underneath. I've been down there. You've all been to a basement where it's musty and stinky and you've got that mildewy smell. There isn't any of that. If there was something really critically wrong, do you think that they would be doing that to the people there? Absolutely not. They did not take care of the building. That was the problem. They did not take care of the building. They wasted our money. That's what they did. And that's why these things have to change. We've got to get people in that are going to start being a voice for the people and start calling these things out. Not just talking about them, but putting it out there.
I totally agree that there were other options and things that we should have considered from the get-go, but they were not, they were ignored. And when I look at Nashville, Tennessee and how they've progressed, in the 5 years that, I mean, I go back and forth, I was just there in July, it's home away from home. And I can tell you that they don't have state tax, they don't have levies. In fact, my brother-in-law was like, a levy, what in the world? I mean, they do have a higher state tax, sales tax, but they know how to listen to the people. They know how to bring in innovation, and I think that these are the conversations that as commissioners, we need to look at some of these areas that are progressing and are doing well, and have those conversations with them, so that we can bring innovation here into Toledo, and not just off the back of one big company.
I started law school in 1978. Okay, now I sound old. But even back in 1978, it was under federal court order because it was designed so poorly. That's the inefficiency that we've been living with all of this time, and that's why we need to change, because it's a waste of money. It's a common arithmetic problem. The other problem is that no matter where we build it, whether we build it in North Toledo or whether we build it somewhere downtown, it's going to be someplace other than the mall where it is now, where they have access to those tunnels. What we need to do is to think outside of the box, be innovative, come up with ideas that maybe, and my idea is, why don't we take a courtroom from Toledo Municipal Court and put it at the facility? If you can resolve 40%, and a lot of mornings you resolve 40% of your custody cases at the initial appearance, if you have a courtroom going to the facility with a prosecutor and a public defender, you can resolve 40% of those cases and you never have to worry about transporting. Then you use videos for some, although judges, and I was of this belief too as a judge, I would not use video if I'm trying to determine credibility. If I want to decide whether you're lying to me or not, I want you in the room and I want to see how you're squirming or whatever. And that's, if you do a combination of things, and again, that's the experience that I bring to the discussion, that the current commissioners don't have that background, that I can hopefully add to the discussion, putting and it'll have to take some change because Toledo Municipal Court will have to change the way that they are organized, and judges don't like to change. But hopefully we can convince them that it makes sense for the community to put a courtroom at the facility.
Thank you. Great questions. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Actually, I have a question just for Sandy.
Which one?
Which Sandy?
Oh, Sandy Spang, sorry. If you are elected, what happens to your seat on the city council?
Fair question, and I've seen it happen a couple times because we've had some empty positions. I would serve until the end of the year. I would be sworn in as a commissioner at the beginning of January. My position then would be open for the current members of council would appoint someone by vote to fill that position, but then there would be a special election in May. And at that point, because there would still be 2 years left to serve in my term, so there would be a special election, and then those additional years would be served by that new person.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Good question. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, so county, I believe they did Huntington Center. So do you guys have any specific economic development plans in mind, whether they be in Toledo or outside of Toledo, and if so, could you specify?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right, okay. So those were Huntington Center, Fifth Third Field are very successful projects that were seeded with public money. But what we're seeing right now, and this is good news, we're seeing private investment. We're seeing the old Overland site where we used to build Jeeps. We've got 3 new companies, including Dana, building those new generation axles there. It's an economic development, it's good, it's private investment, but it's a workforce development problem. Companies love where we're at. I know I've told you folks this before, but if we drew a 500-mile circle around here, 60% of the country would fit in, the population would fit in that circle. And that means we can still make things and move things in Toledo. And we're seeing Cleveland Cliffs in East Toledo. East Toledo, that's been waiting for so long for some investment, is getting a new 69-acre metro park. They're getting the Frank Cass development with 360 upscale apartments, and they're getting the $700 million investment with Cleveland Cliffs. They're going to be bringing ore from Minnesota, making these little iron briquettes. which are then gonna be shipped by truck and by ship and by rail. So what we wanna do right now is fan the fire of that private investment. Bring those companies here, and it's workforce development. You know, the Cherry Street Mission has been doing workforce development. Lots of folks in our community, the library, a lot of workforce development. The county's the biggest player in workforce development. I want to bring all of that together under one umbrella. But do you know, they started training people for call center work, and a call center moved here. They're in the e-bike center down in Uptown. They moved here because they knew they'd have a steady pipeline of employees. You cannot underestimate how important workforce development is right now. And we need to move people who've had problems with substance abuse, who've been incarcerated, who have had problems with mental illness. We can't leave them out of the workforce. We need to find ways to bring them productively into our workforce and help grow jobs in Lucas County.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to?
Sure,
Oh,
you go.
go ahead, Sandy.
So I agree with that we need to find different ways to be creative with economic growth. But sadly, we keep going back to the numbers. We have the highest poverty rate here in this region. We have high taxes. Property taxes are immense. And so these things do not bring industry growth. And then what we do have jobs. I drive all over the place. I see jobs posted, the tool and die, and they have good wages. But what I'm finding as I talk to some business people is they can't pass the drug screen. And secondly, if they do want to work with our incarcerated population, there's the parole. That's another company that I talked to, and they said, you know what, I want to work with the people. We've got to do some contracts, but we got to do something that's going to, it's going to help us too as the businesses. There's got to be an incentive here. There's so much regulation. So, I mean, all of these things, when I compare, again, I compare where I came from, Nashville, and they've just boomed. And then I see the oppressive state that we're in right now, and I'm telling you, it can be turned around. It absolutely can be turned around. But we've got to decrease taxes. And that's something that, oh my gosh, we've got to look at duplication of services between the county and the city. And I know that Mayor Wynn has talked about that. And when I talked to him briefly, he said that he would like to meet with me. Yeah, we could discuss that, because that is an issue. And unfortunately, when you talk like that, and people get a little antsy, because that means that there's going to be some job cuts when that happens, when you do the city and the county, and you're going to have to see where you're duplicating services. But we've got to turn things around, and the only way that we're going to do that is by lowering our taxes, by cutting some of this waste that we're talking about, like a jail, and focusing on those issues that are important in our communities. Drug, opiate, these are big issues, and we need to bring the workforce up. Anyway, that's.
Thank you. Okay.
There's a lot of issues here. First of all, who knows how long marijuana stays in your system if you smoke a marijuana cigarette?
It stays 6 weeks approximately.
But as measurable, it's about 2 weeks. Okay, as far as, and the part of the problem is they can be stone cold sober, and if you're going to try to get a carpenter's job and you test positive, they're not going to hire you. Okay, so we need to look at common sense regulations. You don't want people that are intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or whatever, but at the same time, you need to have common sense, and technology can help us hopefully develop ways that are to measure intoxication rather than just detection of marijuana in the system, because that's not an indication of intoxication. Secondly, we need to think outside of the box. One idea that we have, how many people have kids with student loan debt that have gone to, I mean, it's kids are getting out of college with $100,000 in debt with an undergraduate degree. We need to find ways, and they're moving to Cleveland or Chicago or Ann Arbor. We need to get those kids back so that the brain drain is stemmed. One way we can do that, and I proposed that we put together a scholarship program to offset some of that student loan debt. So that basically someone with a degree, to get them to move back to Lucas County, we could offset up to $10,000 over years, and then this would be done with workforce development dollars and also community donations, business donations, to try to get these people to move back to Lucas County. And my family is the same. I have 3 kids, one stayed in town, one's in Cleveland and one's in Chicago. And I'd like those kids back home. And one way we can do it is this relocation scholarship. And it's just it's a small step, but it's a common sense step. And those are the kind of steps we need to take.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a quick question. Just to throw it out there. I know what I think the county commissioner's job is, but would someone please tell me what the county commissioner's job is?
Basically, they rule over things that you don't think about every day. But as Sandy has indicated, there are basically they fund the jail, they fund all of the court system, they fund all of the detention system, they fund developmental disabilities in this county. We have a developmental disabilities board. We do everything from dog catcher to workforce development. Yeah, child support, so jobs and family services, all of that comes under the county purview.
So it's like a budgetary control?
Can I take over?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is the Ohio County Commissioners Handbook. It's just the title. It isn't, you can find it online and you can read about the details. So here's the change that it would be for me. I'm currently in a legislative position. We pass legislation and we allocate money. County commissioners can't pass any legislation. It's an administrative job. That's one of the reasons I'm pursuing it, is because I think it fits my skills. It's an administrative job. And so what you are doing is you are taking the edicts that come from the state, the things that they say need to happen in the counties, and we're administering them. So I hope that kind of helps clarify a little bit. And looking at this list, it's so broad. If you look this up online, you can click on those links and you can read more deeply. There are 130 pages in the Ohio Revised Code of the responsibilities of commissioners. It's broad ranging and it's touching your life in ways you don't even realize.
So
For clarification,
yeah.
it's not totally administrative. For instance, like the TARTA levy. They were going to roll back the property tax, which I would have liked, and replace it with a sales tax. That, to go in front of the voters, had to be approved by the commissioners. Whether it's the zoo levies, those have to be approved by the commissioners as well. So even though they're not passing it as such, they do have a certain input into that process as far as taxes. And so it's a little more complicated, but as
Yeah, like they approved the sales tax, the increase in 2015.
Right.
Those are, and the increase for your license plate recently, which in March. So these are some of the things that they do.
There are fees that they do have control over that are out there. This is what I'm saying. But as Sandy's indicated, this is Sandy, it's complicated stuff, and it's far-reaching, and it's usually stuff that health department, you don't think of that stuff when you equate that to the county. So many times people say, well, are you going to fix my roads? Well, maybe, but it might be the city of Toledo. That's right. I need police. Well, if you live out in the township, that's the sheriff. And so, it's kind of a complicated system.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for just one more question.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned how they're looking at trying to correct the problems with the lead pipe issue. Is that, and so in looking at that, is that currently being considered, as one of the necessary improvements at Collin Park or the city, where money's been budgeted for that, or is that something that's still under consideration?
All right, Sounds kind of like a city question, so I'll take it. The $500 million worth of improvements at Collins Park were mandated by the EPA. And Collins Park, think of it this way, Collins Park is the treatment facility. And it is in good condition now that we've made $500 million worth of improvements to it. You can be pleased to know that a great deal of progress has been made. What we're talking about the lead pipes, is the distribution system. We have an old distribution system. It's one of the things I liked about the Tawa plant. You take, for example, Monroe County. They don't have a single lead pipe, but they were going to participate in the replacement, the 2.5% per year of replacement of our lead pipes. I like that for Toledo. What we're looking at now, possibly under the mayor's current plan to replace the lead pipes, somewhere that it might be an assessment. That would be something that would be borne entirely by the citizens of Toledo rather than by the entire regional authority. Another reason I like the original, fully regional authority plan. We are replacing some lead pipes every year, but it's slow go. Without extra infusion of capital into that, it won't be done rapidly. Now, just to let you know, there is a substance that they put into the water at Collins Park that coats the pipes. And so that was the problem in Flint, was that the new water that was eroded, and that was how that lead was released. So our water is regularly checked, and you would be notified if it went beyond the acceptable levels. But I think we all agree that we want a lead-free water distribution system.
So the reason, the thing that's on the ballot now, it wouldn't help that issue.
It does not address that issue. It does not address that issue. It is simply an opportunity. It creates a board of public utilities directors who will get together and review the needs for capital improvements to the system, current operational costs. They'll make a recommended rate level, and that will then be sent to Toledo City Council, who can choose to do nothing. And I will be honest with you, politicians often like to not be involved in raising rates, so they may simply be passive. If City Council does nothing, that becomes the rate, and they do have the option to veto it, or make a change, or make it higher, or make it lower. But remember, that's there because of all of that debt and the fact that the creditors are going to require that. Here's what the industry standard is. Here's what we as citizens need to expect. That what we pay for water is the actual cost of treating it and delivering it. Simple. That's the industry standard. And that's what our community partners want. They want water at the actual cost to treat it and the actual cost to deliver it.
But at the same time, you're paying for the distribution center too. It's kind of like cable. You know, I don't watch a lot of cable, but when I want to turn it on, I want it to be there. And so I pay an unconscionable amount of money to the Buckeye Cable every month, which I really don't like. Just so when I want to sit down and watch Pole Dark, I can do it. You know, so that's part of the calculus of setting those prices. But again, having somebody that knows what they're doing is important, so that is a reasonable amount. That you pay something to have the system, but also that you pay a reasonable fair rate for what you use. And so that's the balance that we'll be facing in the future.
Thank you. Do you want to comment, Sandy?
Well, your question was more of, are the pipes that they're going to be using, is that part of this issue 15? Is that what you were asking? Or were you asking?
Part of the current improvement plan, or, you know, looking at Collins Park, Sandy, she kind of answered that for us.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know if you were going with, are the pipes coming from like local, or talking about what President Trump, I mean, even today when he spoke about with the steel workers that he's wanting to keep the steel here and the tariffs that he's implemented. I didn't know if that's what you were referring to or coming to.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Okay, we have to move on now to this. Sandy B, we're going to have you start. We're going to do 2 minutes, a 2-minute summary. Yes, Sandy B? You get to start? Yep.
So I'm obviously the, for lack of a better word, and I probably shouldn't say this, but the underdog here. I am the endorsed Republican. But more than anything, I feel like I represent the people of this community. That's my heart. I'm not in this race to go to the next best move or position down the line. That's not where I'm, somebody's asked me that a couple times, that's not where I'm going. I'm not here to have power or move on in that arena. For me, it's more of, I see a need, I see the injustice. It really is an injustice. And I know that Mr. Byers said it's not just, there's more issues in the jail. You're right, you are absolutely correct. But this jail issue affects so many. It really does. We have, and I said this before, I don't like to be called one of the most miserable cities in the nation. I don't like that. I want to change that. But I see that we have given the current administration that we have here locally, those that have been in office for so long, the same type of, they do the same thing. Overtax, 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 levy, overtax, build, start over. We've got to start looking at the issues here and how we can save the money for the taxpayer and focus on the issues that are affecting. We want job growth, but what companies are, one of the biggest companies here laid off over 100 people. I work for that company. Another company recently closed down in Oregon. So we're seeing increase economically across the nation, but here in Toledo, we're seeing cuts. And so something's got to change. So I'm asking you to vote for me because I'm going to be representing you, the people. Are there issues that I'm not aware of? Absolutely. But guess what? I know how I'm a nurse. I know how to dive in, and I will for each and every one of you.
Thank you. Gary?
We've talked about a lot of things here tonight. And I still think it comes down to three different things. We need to work together as a region, whether it's water, whether it's workforce development. And I disagree. I think our community I will compare our community to anywhere in this nation. The metro parks that we have, Lake Erie, the zoo, the symphony, we have a quality of life here that people don't realize. And people that have grown up here don't always appreciate it, my kids included. But I will compare our community and the quality of life and the price of living to anywhere in this country, and I'm proud of that. But we need to work as a region in order to keep that going in the right direction, because right now there are jobs and there's new development. We had $1 billion project, a clean energy project that is going to open soon in the city of Oregon. That's the only $1 billion project in the whole state of Ohio, and it's right here in Lucas County. So that's something to be proud of. I think we need to talk about common sense solutions. Giving kids, try to pay off some of their student loan debts. The kids with degrees will come back to our community. That's a small step, but it's a common sense step that we need to take. Also, experience is important. I've been involved as a prosecutor, as a judge, as a director of the Board of Elections. That type of experience will help things be accomplished. And that's what we want to do. I think all three of us here, we want to accomplish something positive for our community, and that's why I think I'm asking for your vote, and I think they would say the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So some writers are calling this the century of local government. It's because all the real creativity, all the real actions happening at the local level, at the city and county level, mainly because when you don't have resources, you got to get creative. And state and federal governments have, to some degree, turned their backs on local governments and left them to fend for themselves while responsible for 90% of the country's infrastructure. So local government's where it's at. And I came to this later in life with bringing all of the experiences that I've had in life, and I have to tell you, I love local government. And what does good local governance mean? It doesn't mean partisanship. It means building relationships, building trust, doing the work, showing up prepared, doing the research, I'm proud of the things I've been able to accomplish on Toledo City Council. I'm proud that I shone a beacon on the way we use our block grant dollars, and that's changing. I found the $3.68 million of block grant money that over the last 10 years was squirreled away, unbeknownst to the mayor's office or city council. Money that could have been spent in neighborhoods, in your neighborhood. In 2011 alone, $950,000 was put into an operational reserve by the Department of Neighborhoods. That was a rough year in Toledo. 68 positions are partly or fully funded by block grant dollars. That money belongs in the neighborhoods. I'm proud that I brought priority-based budgeting to the city of Toledo, and it's changed the way that we're doing our budgeting process. It's made it more open, more conversational, looking for efficiencies. It's very exciting to be a part of that. It's exciting to work with people like you. I love local government. It's not about partisanship. At the county level, all votes should not be 3-0. Sometimes they should be 2-1. And sometimes we need a little bit more balance and transparency. I ask for your vote November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Wow, thank you guys. We're going to, our CSO is here, so we're going to jump into the last 3 minutes of our meeting. I cannot thank you enough for your time. Really, thank you so much. You're welcome to stay.
It's great, thanks, Gary.
And I'm going to scooch. All right. Officer Scott? Oh, you just have to.
Let me time me, officer status.
Oh, I see.
I don't have a lot. I know it's late, so if you guys have anything